war, the places where he owned property, real estate, was in the eastern part of Poland. So when the Soviets invaded Poland, he was expropriated and lost everything, so he was bankrupted. So he moved to Krakow. He offered his good services to the staff of the German SS General Schöngard. Both shared their love for art, and both of them went out to loot art from Polish nobility and wealthy Jews. For his own protection, Menton was allowed to wear the uniform of an SS Scharführer, which is first lieutenant. It's not a very high rank. But of course he was able to give orders to SS men who accompanied him when he went back to those villages which he has left a couple of years before, including Potoroce, where the Pistiner family lived. He was seeking revenge on the Pistiner family because he got involved before the war in a lawsuit with Isaac Pistiner after a business deal which failed. They were suing each other, and Menton lost and had to pay a considerable amount of money to the Pistiner family, and he was seeking revenge. In Potoroce, he killed all the members of the Pistiner family who were around, and also killed hundreds of non-Jewish people there, peasants, who were, let's say, working on the land which he used to own before the war, before he got expropriated. And he was able to do that because he was wearing a German uniform.
Hans's research forced the authorities to investigate Menton's crimes. In 1976, the Soviet police agreed to open a mass grave that contained the bodies of Menton's victims.
I did myself would work.
30 years later, what are your feelings, Hans, when you see this place?
Well, 30 years ago, it was fall, October 76. It was very, very bad weather. And there were probably about 100 Soviet soldiers here on this side. At that time, it was still the Soviet Union. Doctors, pathologists were putting all the bones which were digged up here on huge tables and putting them together. Those Russian soldiers were doing their work. They had water, they were cleaning the bones. The pathologists were putting every bone next to the other so that, let's say, a pattern of a dead body became visible. It was a horrible sight if you looked into the ground here, because the bodies were still laying there. Some of them were still in good shape. Not all of them were just bones. And when they digged up the bodies, you saw, for example, David Start's shoes of little children, probably 7, 8 years old. All kind of items. It was a horrible thing to see. It was one of the most depressing days in my life. He came here with 2 SS men with machine guns, uniformed, Menton as well. He was very calm, very relaxed. He was sitting on a chair, armchair, drinking brandy, smoking a huge cigar. And you have to imagine that the entire village was forced to witness the execution. Even small children were forced to climb trees because they were too small to watch. They needed to climb trees to see the execution of the relatives.
Їх подганяли, потім на яму водили по 4. Той німець з автомата посіяв у яму.
І його хоч не стрілилися, я кажу, не падали вже в ту яму. А там вже була кров повна. Викопали таку яму, і це було багато крові, а вони так топилися в цій ямі.
The grave was closed, not by the SS, but by the relatives of the people. And many of them were still alive. Many of them were, not all had died, but the grave needed to be closed immediately because they wanted to live.
Hans returned with all the evidence he needed. But before the authorities could press charges, Menton, who was in Holland at the time, went on the run.
Then I decided that I need to track him down. So after about, I think, 10 days, I finally managed to find his hiding place. He was hiding in Switzerland. So I went there with the Dutch police, and together with the Swiss police, he was arrested in his hiding place.
Did it come as a surprise to you then to learn that he was a war criminal, or that the Dutch were going to try him as a war criminal?
Oh, it did, of course, yeah. I mean, like, you know the area here. It's a nice, quiet, rural area. If 3 dogs started fighting in the street in Mahonbridge, like, there would be a major news incident in the locality, like, you know. So it was a major surprise to the people that he was a war criminal.
When the allegations became known, and extra allegations about the deaths and what he was supposedly involved in and how he behaved during the massacre of Polish Jews, well, it was mind-boggling, really. World War II had come to sleepy rural Waterford.
Menton was sentenced to 10 years for war crimes by a Dutch court. When he was released from prison in 1985, he announced that he intended to live out the rest of his life in Ireland.
Well, opinion was divided on that at the time, because people who didn't live in the area, people like kind of outside the area small, were very vociferous that he shouldn't come back. The attitude local people had was he did interference when he was living here, like, you know, he gave a bit of employment and there was work for people and there was a bit of money around, and sure, he's an old man now. What was he, 85 or 88 years of age? So what harm could he do, you know?
The first thing I knew about it was I was spokesman for the Jewish Representative Council of Ireland at the time, and I got a phone call from ITV, and they said that they'd like to interview me about Peter Menton, and I said, who's Peter Menton? So basically that's how it started. That weekend I was fortunate in that I met Garrett Fitzgerald, who was the Taoiseach at the time, and I mentioned to him what was happening with Peter Menton. I don't think he even heard of him. And I said, it's going to get a terrible name for Ireland if this man is allowed in. He said, well, let me think about it.